The stars forged human warriors. Part 1 had seen many worlds in her 40 years as a for the Galactic Council. She had walked on frozen methane planets where life moved slower than glaciers. She had floated through gas-giant atmospheres where creatures the size of cities drifted on eternal winds. She had even visited the volcanic hellscape of Hen, where silicon-based organisms thrived in molten rivers. But nothing had prepared her for Earth. The survey ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the solar system. The crew ran their standard scans, looking for signs of intelligent life. What they found made breathing sacs flutter with alarm. The third planet from the star was radiating electromagnetic signals, radio waves, television broadcasts, digital communications. The planet had a technological civilization. "That's impossible," whispered, studying the data. "Look at those gravity readings. Look at the atmospheric composition. 21% oxygen. That's a fire hazard waiting to happen. And that star, it's a yellow dwarf. The radiation levels." Her assistant, a young named, checked the readings 3 times. "The data is correct, researcher. There is intelligent life on that death world." Death world. That was what they called planets where council species couldn't survive without serious protection. High gravity, aggressive chemistry, extreme temperatures, dangerous radiation. Earth checked every box. The council's protocols were clear. First contact with a new species required careful study and preparation. Spent 3 weeks in orbit, watching and learning. What she discovered disturbed her more each day. The dominant species called themselves humans. They were bipedal, bilateral, carbon-based. Standard body plan, nothing unusual there. But everything else about them screamed danger. They were apex predators. Their eyes faced forward, designed for tracking prey. Their teeth included sharp canines for tearing meat. Their hands could form a powerful grip, with opposable thumbs that could manipulate tools with frightening precision. Worse, they had conquered their entire planet. 7 billion of them spread across every continent, every climate zone. They lived in frozen wastelands where the temperature dropped below water's freezing point. They built cities in deserts where the heat would cook most council species alive. They even had permanent settlements on floating platforms in their oceans. They're survivors, observed watching video feeds of human cities. Look how they've adapted. Different skin colors for different radiation levels, different body types for different environments. They've spread across their world like a virus. Didn't correct the comparison, though she wanted to. Was right. Humans had the adaptability of a plague organism and the intelligence to use it deliberately. The real shock came when they examined human history. The species had only developed agriculture 10,000 years ago. In that brief span, they had gone from stone tools to nuclear weapons. They had split the atom. They had decoded their own genetics. They had artificial intelligence and quantum computers. And they had done it all while fighting each other. Human history was an endless cycle of warfare. They fought over territory, resources, ideas, and things couldn't even understand. They had nearly destroyed themselves dozens of times. Nuclear weapons, biological plagues, environmental collapse. Each time they pulled back from the brink at the last moment, learned their lesson, and continued advancing. "We need to report this to the Council," said finally. "This species is too dangerous to approach without proper authorization." The message took 6 days to reach the Council's central chamber on the Garden World of. 3 weeks later, the reply came back. Proceed with first contact, but maintain defensive protocols. Chose a landing site carefully. A remote area in North America, far from major cities. She took a full security team and enough firepower to level a small town if things went wrong. The ship descended through Earth's thick atmosphere and felt the planet's gravity trying to crush her into the deck. "How do they move in this?" Gasped, struggling to stand even with the gravity compensators running at full power. They were born in it, said, molded by it. Their bones must be incredibly dense, their muscles incredibly strong. This gravity would snap my spine, but for them it's normal. The landing site was a flat plain near a human settlement. As planned, human authorities had been. A delegation was waiting for them. Activated the ship's external cameras and got her first real look at living humans. There were 5 of them, standing calmly despite the afternoon heat that would have sent most council species fleeing for shelter. They wore simple clothing and showed no weapons, though new humans were never truly unarmed. Those hands could kill. Those teeth could bite. Those powerful leg muscles could let them run down prey over long distances. She took a deep breath and activated the translation system. Years of monitoring human broadcasts had given the AI enough data to understand their languages. The external speaker crackled to life. "Greetings from the Galactic Council," said. "We come in peace to welcome humanity to the greater galactic community." One of the humans stepped forward. Female, if understood their biology correctly. Middle-aged. Dark skin that spoke of adaptation to high radiation environments. She smiled, showing those predator teeth, but her body language suggested welcome rather than threat. "I'm President of the United Nations," the human said. "On behalf of humanity, we're honored to meet you. Please come out, we mean you no harm." Hesitated. Then she reminded herself that she was a scientist. Understanding required risk. She disabled the gravity compensators, gasped as Earth's crushing weight fell on her, and activated the exit ramp. Each step down the ramp felt like walking through thick mud. Her breathing sacs worked overtime. Her muscles screamed. By the time she reached the ground, she was exhausted. The walk from the ship to the human delegation took all her strength. President noticed her distress immediately. "I'm sorry. We didn't realize our gravity would be so difficult for you. Please, we've prepared a low-gravity habitat nearby." "You prepared?" Couldn't finish the sentence. She was too busy trying to breathe. 2 humans came forward with a floating platform. They lifted onto it with shocking gentleness, considering their strength. Within minutes, she was in a pressurized habitat where the gravity had been reduced to something manageable. "Is this better?" President asked through the communication system. "Yes, thank you," studied the human through the transparent wall. "You prepared this facility before we arrived." "We've been watching your ship for 3 weeks," said with that predator smile. "We figured you'd need accommodations. We're not completely unprepared, you know. We've been hopping for this day for a long time." Over the next hours, they talked. President explained Earth's political structure, human culture, and their hopes for the future. Explained the Galactic Council, its member species, and the opportunities that galactic citizenship could provide. But her mind kept returning to one disturbing fact. Humans had known about the survey ship. They had tracked it. They had prepared for contact. They had been studying the Council just as the Council studied them. "We have faster-than-light technology," said at one point. "We've been working on it for decades. We're close to a breakthrough, maybe another 10 years. 10 years. Most species took centuries to develop FTL after they reached space. Humans had gone from first flight to orbital capability in 60 years. They would crack FTL travel in a fraction of the normal time." Sent her report to the Council that night. She tried to be objective, but her concern bled through every line. Humanity was technologically advanced, physically formidable, and psychologically aggressive. They saw challenges as opportunities. They thrived on competition. They had nearly destroyed themselves but learned from the experience. The Council's response came back faster than she expected. Returned to immediately. The Council would debate humanity's fate. The debate lasted for 3 months. Attended every session, watching the Council's finest minds wrestle with the human question. Military commander wanted immediate containment. "These creatures are born warriors. Look at their evolutionary history. Pursuit predators who ran down prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. They don't give up. They don't surrender. They keep coming until they win or die. Do we really want them spreading through the galaxy? Ambassador Aura disagreed. They're intelligent beings with rich cultures. Yes, they're aggressive. Yes, they're dangerous. But they're also curious, creative, and surprisingly empathetic. Did you read the report about their aid organizations? They spend enormous resources helping their own weak and injured. They have entire philosophies based on compassion and cooperation. They also have weapons that could sterilize their planet, countered, and they've come close to using them, multiple times. But they didn't, Aura said. That's what matters. They pulled back. They chose survival over destruction. The debate went in circles. Some council members wanted to quarantine Earth, isolating humanity until they evolved beyond their aggressive phase. Others wanted to eliminate the threat before it could spread. A few, like Aura, wanted to embrace humanity and guide them toward galactic civilization. In the end, pragmatism won. The Council couldn't justify genocide based on potential future threats. They couldn't maintain a quarantine indefinitely, and they couldn't deny that humanity might be useful. The Devourers were growing bolder on the frontier. The Council's peacekeeping forces were stretched thin. Maybe, some Council members whispered, maybe humanity's aggression could be directed toward useful ends. The vote was close, but the decision was made. Humanity would be offered probationary membership in the Galactic Council. They would receive FTL technology, energy production techniques, and access to galactic markets. In exchange, they would contribute to the Council's military forces and submit to observation. Delivered the news to President personally. The human's face showed a complex mix of emotions that couldn't fully read. There are conditions, explained. Human soldiers must train at our military academy. They'll learn our tactics, our protocols, our way of warfare. The Council wants to ensure humanity understands how civilized species conduct themselves. Of course, said, we're honored by your trust. When do we begin? 3 months later, the 1st Battalion of human soldiers arrived at Military Academy. Was there to see them disembark. 500 humans in identical uniforms, standing at attention, despite the lower gravity that would have let them bounce around like children. Instructor Aura, a decorated commander and the ambassador's sister, walked down the line of human recruits. She stopped in front of a male human with dark skin and alert eyes. Name and rank, she demanded. Sergeant, ma'am, the human said crisply. You're in my army now, Sergeant. We do things the civilized way here. No more human barbarism, no more wasteful aggression. You'll learn discipline, strategy, and proper military doctrine. Do you understand? Yes, ma'am. Aura studied him, stood perfectly still, barely breathing, meeting her eyes with unsettling directness. Most species avoided direct eye contact. It was considered aggressive, but humans did it naturally. We'll break you of your bad habits, Aura said. By the time you leave here, you'll be proper soldiers. Yes, ma'am, said again. But Aura saw something in his eyes that troubled her. Not defiance exactly, more like patience. Like he was waiting for something, like he knew something she didn't. The training would begin tomorrow. Aura walked away, already planning the exercises that would teach these barbarians how civilized beings conducted warfare. Behind her, Sergeant allowed himself the smallest smile. Earth's gravity was 2.5 times gravity. Every human in the battalion could already do things the instructors would consider impossible. This was going to be interesting. Part 2. The first morning of training, Aura designed the exercises to be challenging but achievable. She had trained recruits from 17 different species. She knew how to push students to their limits without breaking them. The human battalion would learn that military service required more than brute strength. The obstacle course wound through 3 kilometers of gentle hills, walls to climb, trenches to cross, rope bridges over shallow streams. The course record was 23 minutes, set by a warrior whose species was known for endurance. Aura watched as Sergeant led his squad to the starting line. The humans wore standard training gear, not the powered assistance suits that most species needed. They stood in the lighter gravity of looking relaxed, almost casual. "Begin," Aura shouted. The humans exploded into motion, vaulted the first wall in a single leap, barely touching the top. His squad followed, moving with frightening coordination. They crossed the rope bridge at a dead run, not the careful shuffle most species used. They dove through the water obstacles without hesitation, emerged dripping, and kept running. Aura checked her timer, 8 minutes. They had completed the course in 8 minutes. "There must be an error," she muttered, checking the sensors. But no, the humans had hit every checkpoint. They had completed every obstacle. They were already cooling down, barely breathing hard, while her timer showed an impossible time. She called over, "Explain this." Ma'am looked genuinely confused. "The course record is 23 minutes. You completed it in 8. Is that a problem, ma'am?" Aura studied him. He wasn't being sarcastic. He genuinely didn't understand why she was concerned. "How?" she asked. Looked uncomfortable. "Ma'am, the gravity here is about 0.4 Earth standard. We've been training in 2.5 times this gravity our whole lives. And the obstacles, they're designed for multiple species, right? So they're built for average capabilities across the Council." "Yes." "Then they're not that difficult for us. We're not trying to show off, ma'am. Should we have gone slower?" Aura dismissed him and called an emergency meeting with the other instructors. They compared notes and found the same pattern everywhere. The strength tests. Humans lifted weights designed for the massive warriors without apparent effort. The endurance runs. Humans treated them as light warm-ups. The combat simulations. Humans shrugged off stunning weapons that would incapacitate any other species. "They're not normal," Instructor N said. He was a veteran of 30 years, had trained thousands of soldiers. "Their reaction times are too fast. Their pain tolerance is too high. They take damage that should disable them and keep fighting." "We knew they came from a death world," another instructor pointed out. "We just didn't understand what that meant." Aura made a decision. "Fine, they want to prove themselves. We'll design exercises specifically for them. No more multi-species standards. We'll push them until they break." Over the next weeks, the instructors created training scenarios that should have been impossible. 30-kilometer forced marches in full gear. Hand-to-hand combat drills that lasted until exhaustion. Simulated battles with overwhelming odds. The humans thrived. Aura watched Squad navigate a combat scenario designed to teach the importance of tactical withdrawal. They were outnumbered 5-1. Protocol said to fall back to a defensive position and call for support. Instead, split his squad, flanked the enemy position, and eliminated the threat in 4 minutes. "That's not how you were supposed to handle that," Aura said after the simulation. "We won," ma'am said. "You took unnecessary risks. 3 of your squad members were hit. In real combat, they'd be dead. But we eliminated the threat. The other side took more casualties. We achieved the objective." "At what cost?" Met her eyes with that unsettling directness. "Whatever cost is necessary, ma'am." The phrase haunted Aura. Whatever cost is necessary. It was so casually brutal, so utterly pragmatic. Humans calculated acceptable losses the way other species calculated supply chains. She started studying human military history in her spare time. The battles of Thermopylae, Stalingrad, humans throwing themselves against impossible odds not because they were stupid, but because something behind them was worth protecting. They understood sacrifice in a way most species didn't. The breakthrough in her understanding came during a joint training exercise. Mixed squads of humans and aliens were assigned to secure a supply depot. During the exercise, a mechanical failure caused an ammunition storage unit to catch fire. Toxic smoke filled the compartment where 3 recruits were trapped. Protocol was clear. Seal the compartment, contain the fire, and wait for rescue teams with proper equipment. The rescue would take 15 minutes. The 3 trapped recruits had maybe 10 minutes of air. Aura was coordinating the rescue when Sergeant and 2 other humans grabbed fire suppression gear and ran toward the sealed compartment. Negative, Aura shouted. Wait for the rescue team. Ignored her. The humans unsealed the compartment, plunged into the toxic smoke, and disappeared. Aura's breathing sacs nearly stopped. She had just watched 3 humans commit suicide. The smoke would overwhelm them in seconds. Even if they found the trapped recruits, they'd never make it out alive. 8 minutes passed. Aura stood frozen, unable to process what she'd done. She had let 3 humans die. The rescue team was assembling their equipment when emerged from the smoke carrying an unconscious recruit. The other 2 humans followed, each carrying a recruit. All 3 humans collapsed. Their skin was burned. They were barely breathing. Medics rushed forward with oxygen and healing equipment, but the rescued recruits were alive. Regained consciousness first. He tried to sit up immediately, asking about his. The medic pushed him back down. You nearly died, Aura said, standing over him. All 3 of you, why? Looked confused by the question. They needed help, ma'am. You could have waited for the rescue team. They didn't have time. You didn't know that. You didn't have enough information to make that call. His expression hardened. I had enough. 3 people were dying. We could help, so we did. That's not rational decision-making. No, ma'am, it's not, closed his eyes. But we're human, that's what we do. The rescued recruits recovered quickly. The humans took 3 days of medical leave before returning to training. Word of the incident spread through the academy. Aura noticed something changing in how the alien recruits looked at their human counterparts. Not fear exactly. Something more complex. Respect mixed with bewilderment. Aura spent her evenings reading human literature. Their stories were full of sacrifice, courage, and defiance against impossible odds. They wrote poems about soldiers holding the line against overwhelming forces. They created art celebrating those who gave everything to protect others. They had entire philosophies built around the idea that some things were worth dying for. It was alien to her, valued life above all else. Retreat wasn't cowardice, it was wisdom. Living to fight another day was victory, but humans saw it differently. They would rather die than abandon their position, their mission, or their comrades. 2 months into training, Aura received word that changed everything. The Devourers had broken through the frontier defenses. Multiple colony worlds were under attack. The Council was mobilizing every available military asset, including the human trainees. Aura protested to the Council directly. They're not ready. They've only completed basic training. Sending them into combat now is murder. The Council's response was cold. They're soldiers. Use them or lose the colonies. Admiral delivered the deployment orders personally. His face showed grim satisfaction. Your human experiments will finally be tested properly, Instructor. The Devourers don't care about potential. They'll show us what your barbarians are really worth. Aura gathered the human battalion in the main assembly hall. 500 faces looked up at her, young faces, some barely out of their teenage years. They all wore the same expression, focused, alert, ready. You're being deployed to the AL system, she said. The Devourers have invaded in force. 3 inhabited worlds, 14 billion civilians. The Council fleet is attempting to evacuate non-combatants, but they need time. You'll be part of the Planetary Defense Force. She paused, trying to find words that would convey the reality. This isn't training. The Devourers don't take prisoners. They don't negotiate. They consume everything in their path. Most Council species break when facing them. They're that terrifying. Sergeant raised his hand. What are our orders, ma'am? Hold the line. Give the civilians time to evacuate. Hold for as long as possible. She didn't say the rest. Hold until you're dead. That was what the council expected. Use the humans as a speed bump by a few hours and hope it was enough to get the ships away. Any questions? She asked. A young human in the back raised her hand. How do we kill them, ma'am? Not can we win, not what's our extraction plan, just the practical question, how do we kill the enemy? Devourers are organic ships with biological armor. Conventional weapons work, but they require concentrated fire. They operate as a swarm, coordinating through pheromone signals. Aura called up tactical displays. Their ground forces are even worse. Each warrior form is twice your size with natural armor and blade arms. They're fast, vicious, and they never stop coming. Understood, ma'am, the young human said, making notes. The transport ships departed the next morning. Aura watched from the Academy's observation deck as the human battalion boarded. They moved with quiet efficiency, checking equipment, reviewing assignments, saying quiet goodbyes. She found supervising the loading, Sergeant. Ma'am, I'm sorry, this isn't fair. You should have more training, more time. Smiled, and for the first time, Aura understood the expression. It wasn't aggression. It was sad acceptance. Life isn't fair, ma'am. We learned that on Earth, but we appreciate the training you gave us. It'll make a difference. I want you to know, if I had any authority to stop this, I would. I know, extended his hand, a human gesture she'd learned meant respect and farewell. She took it carefully, mindful of his strength. Thank you for trying to understand us. Most of the council just sees weapons. You saw people. The transport ships engaged their FTL drives and disappeared into the void. Aura stood at the window long after they were gone, staring at empty space. On the transport ship gathered his squad leaders. Listen up. The council thinks we're cannon fodder. They gave us the worst positions and minimal support. They expect us to die buying time. So what else is new? One squad leader muttered, getting dark laughs. So we change their expectations, said. We're going to show them what humans can do, not because we want to prove something, but because 14 billion civilians need us to hold. Some of us aren't coming back, probably most of us, but we're going to make it count. The squad leaders nodded. They understood. Every human in the battalion understood. This was what Earth had prepared them for, not glory, not honor, just the hard necessity of standing between the innocent and the dark. The transport ships jumped to FTL, racing toward the AL system and the waiting swarm. Behind them, Aura sent a message to her sister, the ambassador. We've made a terrible mistake, she wrote. Not in accepting humanity into the council, but in what we asked them to do. We treated them as weapons, but they're so much more than that. I fear we'll realize it too late. The message would take days to reach. By then, the battle for Al Prime would already be decided. One way or another. Part 3. The AL system was dying when the transport ships dropped out of FTL. Admiral's fleet filled the orbital space around Al Prime, massive warships exchanging fire with the Devourer swarm. The void between them churned with debris, burning fuel and bodies. Sergeant watched through the transport's viewports as a council battleship broke in half, its spine shattered by a coordinated Devourer strike. Escape pods scattered like seeds, and he hoped most would make it. First time seeing real combat, the transport pilot asked. She was her first streaked with stress patterns. First time in space combat, said. We've got plenty of experience. The pilot glanced at him. You're very calm. Panicking won't help. The transport shuddered as point defense systems engaged incoming Devourer organisms. Small ones, fast and vicious, trying to latch onto the hull. The automated weapons tore them apart, but more kept coming. They're everywhere, the pilot whispered. I've never seen so many. Activated the battalion channel. All units prepare for combat drop, check your gear, watch your spacing, remember your training. 500 acknowledgments came back. Felt the familiar pre-combat focus settling over him. Fear was there, of course. Anyone who wasn't afraid was either lying or stupid. But fear was just another sensation to be managed, like pain or exhaustion. The transport dove through Al Prime's atmosphere. The viewports showed a planet under siege. Devourer fell like burning rain, each carrying hundreds of warrior forms. The largest cities were already overrun, their buildings serving as hives for the swarm. Smaller settlements fought desperate defensive actions, buying time for evacuations. "Your drop zone is Defense Line 7, the pilot said. "It's a strategic bottleneck in the mountain pass. Hold it, and you cut off the Devourer's advance to the southern evacuation centers." Studied the tactical display. Defense Line 7 was a killing ground. A narrow pass between two mountain peaks, maybe 500 meters wide. Perfect for a defensive stand. Also perfect for getting surrounded if the Devourers came over the mountains. The transport's rear ramp opened. Wind howled through the cabin. Below could see the defensive fortifications. Trenches, bunkers, automated gun emplacements. Council forces had prepared well, but the positions were abandoned. "Where's the unit we're relieving?" asked. "Dead," the pilot said flatly. "Devourers overran them 3 hours ago. You're not relieving anyone, you're starting fresh." "Understood, battalion, move out." The humans dropped into Al Prime's gravity, which was slightly heavier than Earth standard. They hit the ground running, spreading out to occupy the defensive positions. Assessed their situation quickly. The fortifications were good, but they were designed for Council forces. The firing positions were too high for humans. The bunkers had equipment built for different physiologies. "Adapt and overcome," he muttered, already planning modifications. The first Devourer probe attack came within an hour. A small force, maybe 200 warrior forms, testing the defenses. Watched them through his scope as they crossed the valley floor. They moved like insects, all sharp angles and inhuman speed, twice human height. Natural armor plates, blade arms that could cut through steel. "Hold fire until they're in range," ordered. "Conserved ammunition. Aim for joints and sensory organs." The Devourers closed the distance, moving faster than most Council species could track. But humans had evolved chasing down prey on the African savanna. Tracking fast movement was built into their neurology. "Fire!" 500 rifles opened up simultaneously. The Devourers had natural armor, but it wasn't perfect. Bullets found gaps between plates, shattered sensory organs, broke limbs. The swarm's coordination faltered as warriors fell. The survivors pressed on, reaching the first defensive line. Human soldiers met them with close-quarters weapons. Blades, explosives, and when those failed, improvisation. Saw Private use a broken rifle as a club, beating a Devourer's skull until it stopped moving. He saw Corporal detonate a grenade while wrestling a warrior, sacrificing herself to take 3 of them down. The probe attack broke after 10 minutes. 30 Devourers made it back across the valley. 170 stayed behind, dead or dying. The humans had lost 15 soldiers. Checked in with his squad leaders, getting damage reports and casualty counts. The wounded were already being treated. The dead were covered respectfully. There wasn't time for proper ceremonies, but humans needed to acknowledge their fallen, even briefly. "That was just a probe," reminded everyone. "The real attack is coming. Check your ammunition. Repair the fortifications. Get ready." The real attack came at dawn. The valley floor disappeared under a living carpet of Devourer warriors. Thousands of them, moving as one coordinated organism. The sky above them filled with flyers, organic aircraft that screamed like dying animals. Felt his pulse accelerate. Fear tried to paralyze him. He pushed it down and opened the battalion channel. "Remember why we're here," he said. "Behind us are evacuation centers. Civilians who can't fight, can't run, can't defend themselves. They need time. We're going to give it to them. Hold the line." The Devourers hit Defense Line 7 like a tsunami. Automated guns chewed through their front ranks, but they kept coming. Human rifles fired in controlled bursts, each shot counting. Explosives turned the valley floor into a cratered hellscape. The swarm adapted. Devourers used their dead as shields, piling bodies to create cover. Flyers dove at the defensive positions, forcing humans to split their fire. Warrior forms found weak points in the fortifications and exploited them ruthlessly. His position got overrun within the first hour. A group of Devourers broke through a collapsed bunker, and suddenly there were enemies inside the perimeter. Switched to his sidearm, firing point-blank at anything that moved. A blade arm slashed across his shoulder, cutting through armor and flesh. He felt the hot rush of blood but kept fighting. Private tackled a Devourer that was about to kill, wrestling it to the ground. The warrior's blade arm punched through his chest. With his dying breath, armed a grenade. The explosion tore both of them apart. "Seal that breach," shouted, pressing a medical pack against his shoulder wound. "Don't let them flank us." Squad 3 responded, pouring fire into the gap until it was filled with Devourer corpses. The wall of bodies became its own fortification. The battle went on for hours. Human soldiers fought with the desperate efficiency that only comes from knowing you're the last line of defense. When ammunition ran low, they scavenged from the dead. When weapons broke, they used alien technology, Devourer limbs, and eventually their own hands. Lost track of time. There was only the endless cycle of target, fire, reload. His shoulder wound had stopped bleeding but screamed with every movement. He ignored it. A runner reached his position during a brief lull in the fighting. Young, maybe 19, covered in blood that probably wasn't all his own. "Sergeant, we've got wounded piling up. Medical supplies are almost gone, and we're down to 30% ammunition." Check the tactical display. They'd been fighting for 6 hours. The evacuation centers were still loading civilians onto transports. They needed more time. "We hold," said simply. "But sir." "We hold, pass the word. Conserve ammunition, hand to hand if necessary, but we do not retreat." The runner nodded and disappeared back into the trenches. The next wave came an hour later. Devourers had learned from their casualties, adapting their tactics. They came over the mountains this time, dropping from the peaks onto the human positions. It turned the battle into chaos, friend and enemy mixed together in brutal close-quarters combat. Saw Lieutenant Park fighting 3 Devourers simultaneously, her movements a blur of trained violence. She killed 2 before the third blade arm took her head off. He saw Corporal Williams standing over a wounded, holding off Devourers with nothing but a combat knife and absolute fury. A Devourer warrior loomed over. Its blade arm came down in a killing strike. Rolled, feeling the blade pass centimeters from his head. He came up inside the creature's reach, jammed his knife into the gap where its skull met its neck, and twisted. The Devourer collapsed and was already moving to the next threat. In orbit, Instructor Aura watched the battle feeds in numb shock. She had expected the human battalion to break within the first hour. Every model, every simulation, every tactical analysis said they couldn't hold against these odds. But they were holding. The defense line should have fallen a dozen times. Each time, humans filled the gaps. Soldiers too wounded to fight effectively picked up weapons and fought anyway. Squads that had been reduced to 3 or 4 members reorganized and held their sections. The line bent, cracked, but didn't break. "This is impossible," Admiral said, watching the same feeds. "They're taking 80% casualties. Why haven't they rooted?" "Because they're human," Aura said quietly. "They don't know how to quit." On the surface, received the message he'd been waiting for. The last evacuation transport had lifted off. 14 billion civilians were safe, scattered across dozens of ships already jumping to FTL. The mission was complete. Of the 500 humans who had deployed to Defense Line 7, 73 were still combat effective. Another 100 were wounded but alive. The rest were dead or beyond saving. "Battalion, this is," he said into the command channel. "Evacuation is complete. We did it. Now we get ourselves out. Fighting withdrawal to the secondary extraction point. Move." The survivors pulled back in disciplined stages, covering each other's retreat. Devourers pursued, but